Testing, check, check. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late. Had a wonderful sneeze attack. Hello, I am working on a research report, and we started last week on this, and now I am cleaning it up. I started by creating an how I'm going to structure the report, and I'm just going through and putting in really high level outline of what it is I want. I'm taking the research that I did over the course of many months of going and playing various training sims and games, and then doing a rose thorn bud analysis on those games, like lab training. VR is an official training from the CDC about personal protective equipment in labs, and fire safety training is going through and teaching you international safety standards for like in the event of a fire and so forth. Rover mechanics simulator, car mechanics simulator, wrench, and I went through each of these and I did a rose thorn bud analysis on them and talked about them from a UX design perspective and based on the pillars of gaming UX, and talking about if this were a VR experience, what we would need to think about, and if it is already a VR experience, what we need to think about if we were going to convert it into augmented or mixed reality training. And so now I am synthesizing all of that together into one big report to look at trends of what's out there and what's going on in the training industry now as far as what we can get publicly available, because enterprise likes to keep everything very close to the chest, and they often don't want to make public what they're doing. So we have to do what we can, which is what I'm doing, is all of this research to help people in the training industry who need to know how to create effective training for their employees, but there's not any info available because people aren't talking about it because they want to protect their own property. So there is only so much we can do, but I come from that industry. I used to work in that industry, and so I have knowledge that will hopefully help. And I'm working on a report right now of competitive research on all of these different training sims. So what can we learn from this? It's publicly available information. And one of the big things that I saw when I was doing this that I want to make a note of is that see this long list of blue. These are things that aren't good. These are things that are issues with the training that's out there right now, that's publicly available. That's out there right now. And I promise that based on my experience, this is also what's happening with the stuff that's not publicly available. That there's no sharing of standards amongst the enterprise. Not a surprise at all. So I'm going to, that's where people like me come in, and I'm going to start trying to help bridge that gap and help enterprise and help people who are wanting to create effective training to get some standards. I have written the best practices for training if you want to check that out. It's already out there. There's also a video that you can check out on my YouTube channel right here, and if you want to check out the video, there's a link to it in this article. But these are high level best practices for training, and this research has helped me dig in deeper. And also, I'm going to take all of this research, this synthesized findings, and work on a long report. And I'm also going to create a shorter report, and I'm going to create videos and content, and I'm going to create course material on it as well. I create on-demand courses, and I'm going to create a course specifically for training. This is going to help inform as well. At least one, probably more. So that is what I'm working on. And so right now I'm working on a long form report. Usually whenever I create research reports, I will do 2 forms. A very long detailed one that will, if it were a real project, I would share the Miro board with I would share this Miro board with my team. They would have access to it, all of the research that I've done, all of these accessible to them. I would write a long report, a long detailed report for the team if they want and they need the time to go in and dig in. It's mostly for me to inform me because I'm usually the one that reads the long reports. But then I'll also do like a talk or a present. Usually not considered publicly is considered a talk, but like in corporate settings, it would be a meeting, a presentation, where I would present my findings to the team and then give them the option of reading on this long report and looking at all of the artifacts if they want to dig in and learn more for whatever. Then there's also a short form report that I would do that is much shorter. Maybe if you're thinking about it in PowerPoint presentations, which is usually what happens in corporate, but I've actually changed it to where it's just an email that they can read, or a really quick 3 or 4 slide presentation. That's it. Very short, to the point, just the facts. Here's overall findings, and this is how I set it up. This is how I did the research. This is the most important findings, and this is the next steps that we're going to do. If you want to learn more, go dig into the long report. Long report is what I'm working on right now, so that this is going to inform the short report. We need to know all the details before we can summarize the details. So that's how I usually do the work, and I've been doing it live stream here starting last week on the actual report. And I'm probably just gonna do what I can today, and then it's gonna get boring if I just continue doing this on stream. So I'm going to do more work and then come back. But right now, how I've set it up, so I like to do snowball to keep myself from getting overwhelmed, because as you can see, this is a whole lot of information over here on the Miro board. It can be overwhelming. I have to write something about this. So what I do is I do an outline, and I will outline out, so how I did the research, these are the overarching things that are working, these are the standout things that are working, and then I will do the same thing with the issues. These are the overarching issues that are across all the training sim. These are the individual game standout issues that we still want to learn from, and that is this really long column here. The blue here is the individual stuff, and this tells me each individual game has this many issues, but they're not overlapping issues. So that means that they're not sharing. They all have different issues. They all have common issues, but the different issues are like really a lot. Tells me there's no sharing, which is obvious here in that industry, because again, they don't like to share. Some people in the industry are trying to change that, but for legal reasons and so forth, they try to keep everything very close to the truth. Again, sorry if I sound funny. My allergies are driving me insane today. So then I'm going to go through and do the recommendations for, based on this research, what would I recommend for XR training? And then if for the games that are not in XR, because not all of these, some of these were 2D Steam games on the PC. What would we want to think about if we're translating this into XR and thinking about it from a VR standpoint, and mixed reality standpoint, AR standpoint? Head mounted displays, because I don't really worry about the mobile. I focus on head mounted, immersive, hand mounted stuff. And then what would be the next steps if this were a real project? Or for me, it isn't actually, it is a real project because I am using this research to inform a bunch of other things. So I'll talk about what are the next steps. If it were a real project, I would be talking about, okay, now this is what we need to do next to start working on improving our, or creating our thing. Because usually competitive landscape research is done upfront, preferably upfront, to help inform the direction of your project. So last time I had been using Notepad, so I copied it over into better word processing docs so that I can actually see better with visual hierarchy and stuff. So I'm doing an overall outline and talking about, and I'm making notes to myself. I want to explain why. I want to link to the playlist. I want to link to this stuff. I want to give a good example image of this thing. And I'm just going through now and looking at the post-its here, and I'm writing them here as my outline. Then I'm going to go in and say, here's an example image from one of the experiences. Why is this a good thing that it walks you step by step through each interaction, and any best practices that are relevant to that. And if all of them have the same best practice, I'll just wait and share it instead of sharing the same one over and over. But same thing for all of them. It's going to be the same outline. We're going to say, this is what's working, and I'm going to explain that, describe it, and then give an example image why it's good. I stopped at, I like to make them educational, informative, so that you can learn why, because it's important to know why. Why does this matter? So we stopped at PPE standout, so that was the safety training for PPE. We're here. Okay. Where I stopped. Steps. Already did that. So I'm just going to copy this. I don't need those anymore. I was doing that visually because I was in Notepad. That's cool. Okay. I give. Who is this? This is the PPE. To describe it. And then I'm going to give an example image, why it's good. Copy that over and over again because they're on wrench. There, is there being anything wrong with it? If there is, I will. So on PPE, there's a bunch of stuff wrong with PPE. Official training. We need relevant best practices. So this is just the outline that I'm going to have for every single one. Then they tell you what to expect, what you'll be learning, which is actually sad that that's a standout issue or a standout good thing. That the other ones don't do that. That's a standard for education, but this is an official training, whereas the other ones aren't really. So fine. Um, gives you the grading requirements. Also, thing you'll always want to know whenever you're taking. Shows you a map of the environment. I'll explain. Good. The thing that's wrong with the map and the environment, I think, too, is that there's no way of pulling it back up once they've shown it that I can. When you leave the sim and re-enter, it gives you the option to pick up stuff. If it's a longer training, like this is a longer training. So when you have a longer training sim or a be able to pick up where you left off, you don't want to have to start over again. I would rage quit. I'd never finish the thing. So let them pick up where they left off somehow. And this one does that. And then they have stations set up. The issue with this one is that no like wayfinding to say which station should I go to first, what's important to know before I learn the other stuff. So it's kind of, you just have to go and hope that you're in the right spot. The map is, the floor plan's not laid out in a way that guides you. Here's step one, learn this, because you have to know this before you be able to do this thing. They didn't do that. If they did, I didn't see it. So, which is another issue. Okay. 5 Cosmos is supported, which is not common. Okay, so if you're considering buying one, remember that. There's more than one Cosmos, which is also an issue because it's confusing to consumers. Okay, what Cosmos are we talking about here? I think there's an Elite and there's a Pro, and they're different. They're very different. So I think Cosmos, there's a Cosmos and a Cosmos. So it's clear. I have the normal Cosmos for one, and it's not supported on a lot of games. There's an issue with that, and I'm going to talk about that here. It uses everything, it detects it and treats it like a Vive, a normal Vive headset, which is the wand controller, which is a completely different controller, and a lot of games are unusable with that, but this one actually supports it. A big standout. Okay, so Easter eggs and nostalgia bring to life. This is definitely a standout thing that not everyone did. So there's Rover Mechanic Simulator has Linux, Mars, as Rover, and then Contact, all these 80s toys. Actually, do that in first steps. And then I'll explain why this matters. Then I will give example images, why. I don't remember there being anything wrong with it. Maybe there is, I'll say. Then on to, this is it. This is, what I'm doing here, writing this report, is This is helping to keep me from getting overwhelmed with it. I have to. This is going to be a long report. And to keep me from getting overwhelmed by it, which if you get overwhelmed, you get freeze, and you don't get anything done. I have to get stuff done. Look at all the content that I put out there. I use the same method for everything that I put out there. And I learned this actually from Financial Peace University. Called debt. No, snowball debt payoff. Take your smallest amount of debt, you pay that off, and take that money that you were paying on that debt, and then you take the next debt and you put that money towards that next debt. And you snowball and snowball, so you're slowly building up money to pay off all of your debt. And I've gotten out of debt that way, and that's also how I use. That's also the method that I use to create content. I will snowball it. I'll start small. I'll take notes like I did here. I just took notes here. All I did, take notes. And they're not even detailed notes. They're very low, high level notes. Not even complete sentences. And then I take that and then I will slowly add on to it. Now fill in the blanks and snowball it, and until I have something. And I'll just keep making passes through it. So that's how I write anything, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, is this method. And I'll just keep filling in, I'll keep cleaning, I'll keep doing passes on it. I get something out. And then done. Move on. And I will reuse the content in other things in the future. There's this great book called Content Everywhere. If I can find it. Quick, it is by Roosevelt Media. Put it in. Is everywhere. Sarah walked the butcher. I have no idea how to say her name. Sorry for butchering it. But it is. You can get it. You can probably check if it's at your library or digital library or something. Funds for that, but it is about being able to reuse your content. And if you pay attention to full reusable management, if you pay attention to YouTube and the really successful YouTube channels, if you pay attention to writers, you'll see that they're doing this. They're reusing stuff and repurposing it in formats. I do with my content, and so it's not like writing for a book. With this digital age, we need to be able to read. So good book to check out if you have availability, or just see if you can find podcasts or something talking about it. You don't have the funds. Book. On with this, and I'm just going to on for a little bit, snowballing it. So I've got something. Okay. Off factor. Handling the off factor. Let's see. First, there's multiple ones that do this. We have some first contact. Off factor is a big deal in VR, especially if you're training. To be able to handle the off factor, get them over that, because they cannot process information if they're in the middle of being overwhelmed by whatever it is they're seeing. So how do we handle that? let them get over that off factor before we can start teaching. Okay. Slowly build up over time. So yeah, because especially with training, you need to get them over that before they can process it. I'm gonna rewrite these headings. They're not gonna stay like this. Once I get everything into this document, I'm gonna be mostly focusing on the document referencing. Getting it in here so that I can see it. There. Like that. A bit. Okay. Um, is possibilities, portraying possibilities. It's using schemorphism. I don't go under one. But you're more from sample. Good. There are best practices on doing NPC behaviors to, well, not, there's kind of, I've written and talked about this before about NPC behaviors directed to where you want to go. As a good way of teaching someone things, in especially if you have an international market and you don't have the time or budget or money to to pay voiceover actors and translators for country, then you could do NPC behaviors, but you really have to have a good understanding of body language, and it really needs to be designed really well for it to work. NPC behavior is way more important in XR than it is in any other medium, any other platform. That sound first. Our safety training was also short. PPE was not short. So there was another thing. Onboarding. Okay. Safety. IPD. Keep yourself from getting eye strain. So is all of the overarching good things. Now we get into the issues, and this will take a really long time because there's a lot of blue. And then I'll also have to come through and go through the later too. I'm just going across the board because I don't want to. This is how I keep track of where I am. I will, because this is over here follow up info on is this an overarching issue or not, and I'll have to go through these too. But I'm just going across the board to keep so that I don't lose my spot, track of where I am. Then these are the things that are overarching issues across all of them. All of the experiences I tried. Probably that better later. Um, so only teaching you what, not why. Except for they're fine. Weird. explain why this is an issue. Because we need to know why. Behaviors don't change if you don't know why. If you just have a list of rules to follow and you don't understand why that matters, it goes for anything, then you're not going to change the list of rules. And who wants to just follow a list of rules? Some people do, but most people don't have any motivation for it. That's how people get hurt when you're doing safety training. Doesn't include safety training. Well, first contact doesn't include any safety training. First steps does a little bit. And is it teaching why? I'm not sure it's teaching why in these either. So I have suggestions. One, that's what the lines are. The recommendations based on that, because I have at least one recommendation per issue, I think. Want at least one bud per thorn, one suggestion for improvement per thorn. I don't know if I don't, but I will write them in the report, of course. Not covering some of the basic issues need to go over for newbies. So I think I have this. Yeah, I do. It's here. I just don't have a line to it. Know who your target I do, but I just didn't draw a line for it. So it's the same. These ones work really. Yeah. So you're only teaching what, not why. This they're not teaching me. Their first steps. I don't know that it matters. It might not be relevant for those. I'm gonna ask myself that question. So doesn't include safety training. First steps does. First contact doesn't. For example, the car lift safety in car mechanic simulator and the grounding before touching electronic components. They're not teaching you to do that in Rover mechanic simulator. I remember. Issues, explain why that's an issue. Not covering some of the basic issues that you need to go over for new. First steps in first contact. So, like, it doesn't include the importance of stuff. Overstripping wheel nuts with a pneumatic wrench does not cover concepts of normal and reverse threads. components. Don't know when the oil's been added. Car mechanic simulator. Enough oil has been added. Sure, 2 of that, and skipping important steps that are supposed to be. And then I have some examples. This is on. And it doesn't teach the importance of making sure that you put the cap back on when you change your oil. That is important. And then fire safety is asking you to inspect extinguishers, but it's not telling you what to look for. Important things. Yeah. And then we get into the individuals. Have a meeting. What I'm going to continue doing, this is going to take a while, is basically, this is just what I'm doing right now. This part's boring, so I'm not going to watch this. I'm taking each and every one of these, and I'm going to add them here. This. I'm just snowballing it. And once I have something that's a little more fleshed out, I'll come back and show you what I've done so that you can see. But for now, I think it's just going to be, it's just monotonous stuff that I need to do to get the basic outline in here. And then I'm going to come back and use all of that footage that I have of me playing these games, which I have here on YouTube. I can go and get screenshots from these things and add them to my report, just like I did with the previous report for Tabletop. So this is an example of what I'm outlining. Overarching issues. Unclear information. So I have an example here of an information architecture in Voice of Cards, and then I explain what's happening. The information architecture of the menus and in-game inventory management are not always as intuitive and clear as it could be, resulting in confusion over where to go to complete. Important thing, a good information structure is vital to helping people find content. And then learn more about it from these books, which I've already referenced here. And then next thing, players can't do this. This is sample image of it and the lack of explain why this is important and where you can learn. That's the basic outline that I have here. And that's what I'm going to do for. And then once we get to, here's the same thing about Vibe 1 versus the Vibe Cosmos, is they're very different, and you have to support both of them for it, which is a very common problem with VR games. So I just go through and do the same thing with it. And then once I get to my recommendations, based on all these findings, I'm going to take general recommendations for, and in this case, it'll be training. And then this is going to be the same thing regardless of whatever genre you're in. You need to know your target audience. So I'm probably going to have the same thing in this, and explain why it's important to do this. And here's where you can learn more about it. For user research, unless you're doing, and then just gonna, this is also relevant to training. Let people go at their own pace. So forth. Motion sickness, locomotion, these are all important things. Handle, comfort zones, ergonomics, fatigue. These are gonna be like the same thing, just different examples. These are gonna be the same issues because I come across these same issues in all kinds of games, especially VR. It's still an issue because that are creating the systems aren't taking this into account. So, guidance and instruction is definitely relevant to training. So, yeah, consistency. All of these things are still going to be the categories that I have here for recommendations, but it's going to be more because it's training. So, it's going to be handled very similarly. So, and then we're going to talk about, okay, translating training are if it were a 2D game. So, Rover Mechanics Simulator, Car Mechanics, things are 2D games. So, what would we want to think about if we were translating those 2D games into 3D? If we were thinking about VR versus augmented versus mixed reality, what would we need to think about? I have a lot of notes over here about that, and I'll probably be adding more later about that to the actual report. That's basically how I'm doing the long report. I'm going to continue writing it for an actual project. These would be my next step. So that's basically how I'm going to be doing this report. It's basically the same thing. Yeah, and I will get back to you on that when I get more done on it, so that you don't have to sit there and watch me boringly write out this report. I will see y'all next week. Next week, we're going to start gaming again. Start with branching narrative, I think. We're going to learn what that is and play some games to do it.